Cross-cultural approaches to healing and therapy. Western psychology encompasses the study of human behavior and mental processes from a scientific perspective within the context of Western culture and academic traditions. Psychologists seek to comprehend the entirety of human experience, including the underlying motivations driving people's actions, thoughts, and emotions. In psychology, there are five main approaches: biological, cognitive, psychodynamic, behavioral, and humanistic. Some examples of these techniques are cognitive behavioral therapy, exposure therapy, and group therapy. Western psychology boasts numerous strengths that contribute to its effectiveness in understanding human behavior and mental processes. Firstly, its empirical foundation, established in thorough scientific methods, ensures the reliability and validity of its findings. This emphasis on empirical research enables psychologists to generate evidence-based theories and interventions, enhancing the credibility of the field. Additionally, Western psychology encompasses a diverse array of theoretical frameworks, allowing for a multifaceted approach to studying human behavior. Practical applications derived from Western psychology, such as therapeutic interventions and counseling techniques, have proven effective in treating mental health disorders and improving overall well-being. Furthermore, the global influence of Western psychology has led to the adoption of its principles and practices in various cultural contexts worldwide, facilitating cross-cultural dialogue and collaboration. Western psychology, while undeniably influential in advancing our understanding of human behavior and mental processes, is not without its limitations. One of the foremost concerns lies in its tendency towards cultural supremacy, often prioritizing Eurocentric perspectives while marginalizing alternative worldviews and Indigenous knowledge systems. This cultural bias permeates various aspects of the discipline, resulting in a limited and narrow understanding of human psychology. Additionally, Western psychology's historical emphasis on individualism and medicalization may overlook the importance of social and cultural context in shaping psychological constructs, leading to interventions that fail to address systemic issues or adequately consider the holistic well-being of individuals and communities. Furthermore, because positive thinking is so popular, other methods like qualitative research and different ways of understanding things aren't given much attention. This means we're missing out on really understanding the depth of human experiences because we're only focusing on what we can measure. I will now show you a video of Dr. Hanran, a psychologist from an Asian background.
Who does psychology study? The majority of psych subjects are white, middle-class, elite American undergrads. These results are then exported to the rest of the world and used to guide what healthy and good emotional functioning looks like. Next, we have a tendency to base ideas of health on Western ideals of self. These are individualistic rather than collectivist and heavily self-reliant.
Critically analysing Western psychology, I will now pass you over to Monique and Shauna to discuss Indigenous psychology and Chinese medicine.
Indigenous Australians view the world according to the knowledge, beliefs, and values passed down from their ancestors via the process of yarning, or in other words, storytelling, which assists in maintaining culture through generations. Indigenous Australians have a holistic approach to health and well-being. They believe there is an interconnectedness in all forms of life, including the environment in which they inhabit. Connection to country has frequently been cited as a vital part of overall well-being for Indigenous Australians. This means that in regards to their psychological well-being, it is not just the psychological component of their lives that must be addressed, but also their emotional, spiritual, social, and environmental aspects. There are many current flaws surrounding the treatment of Indigenous Australians in the healthcare system, as well as policies and approaches that are not particularly appropriate or helpful. In a survey done between 2018 to 19, Indigenous Australians rated their levels of psychological distress as high or very high at a rate 2.3 times higher than non-Indigenous Australians. Many Indigenous Australians have voiced that non-Indigenous Australians are often making decisions surrounding healthcare policies that impact them without giving them an opportunity to be part of the decision-making process. As one Indigenous person stated, "We don't want to be consulted, we want to be at the table." Moreover, a large amount of the current research surrounding Indigenous communities has taken a deficit-based approach. This approach emphasizes that Indigenous peoples' ethnic characteristics and low socioeconomic status reflect the gap in health and well-being compared to non-Indigenous Australians. This not only perpetuates these deficits within the person, but also in their treatment by healthcare professionals. This approach fails to acknowledge the strengths of Indigenous people and fails to yield effective solutions to improving Indigenous health and well-being. Here is an example of mistreatment towards Indigenous people in the healthcare system.
What was the issue? Oh, she had florid delusions. Oh, so what were the delusions? Oh, this nonsense that somebody had pointed a bone at her grandfather because she hadn't had appropriate permission from elders before she left home. Sorry, what? Oh, yeah, pointing the bone. Nobody believes in that. Are you kidding me? Of course people believe in that. No, nobody believes in that anymore. Yes, they do. No, it was a delusion. So I had, two psychiatry for the house officer in my lab pocket. I pulled out and opened it up to the patient and said, see here, delusion, fixed false belief, not in keeping with the culture in which you were raised. This was entirely in keeping with the culture in which she was raised, not with you were raised, in which she was raised. He was a good man. He wasn't a bad man. He was a nice man. I know that he had concern for his patient, but he just had absolutely no idea that his fixed view of the world wasn't everybody else's fixed view of the world.
In alignment with the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, healthcare systems should ensure they respect, acknowledge, and uphold Indigenous peoples' collective and individual right to develop and maintain their own health systems, customs, institutional structures, spirituality, traditions, procedures, and practices in regards to their own health and well-being. The concept of positive psychology emphasizes that individuals are able to thrive when given the right strengths, skills, and social context. This strengths-based approach stands in contrast to the deficit-based models that have historically dominated Indigenous healthcare. The integration of Indigenous worldviews and Western scientific research methods may help create a new and innovative approach to addressing the health and well-being of Indigenous Australians. Blending Indigenous knowledge and practices with evidence-based Western medicine has the potential to develop more culturally responsive and effective solutions. One potential model for culturally responsive healthcare is the District Aboriginal Health Action Groups, or DAGs. DAGs are comprised of Aboriginal Australians, health service providers, and workers from the Population Health Unit for the Aboriginal Health Team. They meet quarterly to discuss health issues regarding Aboriginal people in both mainstream and Aboriginal specific services, with the aim of improving healthcare outcomes. This collaborative, community-driven approach ensures that the unique needs and perspective of Indigenous peoples are central to the design and delivery of healthcare services. Having individuals who understand Indigenous peoples' holistic needs, not just their medical needs, can help facilitate more culturally appropriate and effective healthcare.
Hello, so I'm going to be discussing Chinese approaches to psychology. China has well-established roots in the development of the field of psychology, and they are also recognized for their philosophical roots in psychology. China's foundational principles of Chinese psychology are deeply rooted in century-old philosophies such as Taoism, Confucianism, and Buddhism. These practices and traditions emphasize the importance of holistic well-being, harmony and balance, and interconnectedness. So I'm going to expand on these Chinese philosophies starting with Taoism, which is a philosophy that encourages living in harmony with the universe and the energy within it. This energy is known as qi, and it is often symbolized by the yin and yang, which you can see on the left, which are two opposing forces which should be in balance. Next we have Confucianism, which is derived from the philosopher Confucius, who aimed to create a harmonious society and environment with people behaving within reason and according to their morals. Next we have Buddhism, which is believing that life is one of suffering and that engaging in behaviors such as meditation, both spiritual and physical labor, and engaging in good behaviors is the path to achieving enlightenment, or in other words, nirvana. Now I have a short video on the Buddhist perspective, and this is Tri Dao, who has a worldwide program in both cognitive behavioral psychology and Buddhism, and he also teaches other monastics Buddhist psychotherapy.
So this is why we don't worship the Buddha. We pay great respect. We revere him, which is to hold in deep respect, but we follow the teachings, right? Teachings becomes, well, the living Buddha.
Awesome. So I'm now going to discuss some Chinese approaches and Western psychology using the example of CTCP. So, a Chinese culturally oriented variant of cognitive therapy has been propositioned for many years, and this is known as Chinese Taoist Cognitive Psychotherapy, or CTCP. Clinical trials of CTCP have shown to significantly reduce symptoms of depression and generalized anxiety in Chinese adults. And essentially, CTCP works by combining elements of cognitive therapy with philosophies of Taoism.
So earlier in this presentation, we have covered some of the strengths and weaknesses of Western psychological approaches, as well as provided insight into health and therapy methods from other cultures, such as Chinese philosophy and indigenous practices. The final section of this presentation will focus on the Western incorporation of Eastern cultural practices in their methods of health and therapy. One example of a popular Eastern practice being currently integrated into Western society would be Taoism. Taoism is now being strongly connected to the psychological practice cognitive behavioral therapy, also known as CBT. The teachings of Lao Tzu, which focus on the principles of living in harmony with nature and the belief of the law of unity in the form of the two forces yin and yang, have been correlated in multiple studies to show reduced symptoms of clinical and non-clinical depression in patients. Taoism shares some of the goals of Western psychotherapy approaches, including the idea that a person's self-concept should be congruent with actual lived experiences, and this helps individuals have deep and harmonious relationships with each other while having respect for society and also focusing on their personal growth. Taoism's success in Western psychological practices, especially CBT, has created a new hybrid form of therapy called Chinese Taoist cognitive therapy, also known as CTCT. This form of therapy is now being used in Western medicinal and psychological practice. Other practices gaining popularity in Western psychology include acupuncture, Tai Chi, yoga, and meditation. So here's an example of these practices being used in social media. Mindspo is a social media account that posts tips about living a healthy lifestyle and how meditation contributes to it. In Eastern traditions, meditation refers to a variety of practices that focus on the mind and the body, and which are used to calm the mind and enhance overall well-being. In Western psychology, it sometimes is used as a tool to manifest and perceive what our future may look like in a positive sense. While it should be remembered that meditation was initially a practice that was created by Western psychology, it is being used creatively through informal means like social media to spread the message of tranquility and the calmness of thoughts. So to conclude, healing and therapy is an integral part of psychology and it is used in Western approaches as well as Eastern approaches. However, we need to make sure we give due credit to other cultures for coming up with these practices and giving them the proper respect while integrating it into our own culture.